all of our issues are based on one of three things, or a combination of those. And that is, you don't think you're enough, you feel different and therefore can't connect, or there's something that you want that's not available to you. Mm-hmm. And, it is a combination of all three things in many people's minds.
Hello and welcome, everyone. So excited to have everybody here today. And today's guest is Gregory Gilmore. I met Gregory when I was a student of RTT. So many of you know I've trained with Marissa Peer in her RTT method, Rapid Transformational Therapy. And during that time that I trained, you actually got partnered up with an individual tutor, which is so awesome. And guess who my tutor was? It was Gregory Gilmore. I was super lucky. So welcome, Gregory.
Thank you.
So Gregory, I'm just going to kick it off and just share with people who you are. Tell us who you are and how you got involved with RTT. And we'll go from there and we can start to share with people how you help others.
Yeah. So thank you for having me today, Stacey. And based on the introduction, I know we're going to have a lot to talk about. Plus, I know that we always have a lot to talk about. So this is going to be a great show. And, my passion is about helping people with addictions, helping people understand that it's just based on a belief and it's just an effort to move yourself away from pain. And so, taking what medicine and what most of society thinks about addiction and turning it upside down and saying, hey, this is not, we're not treating that thing that you're doing. We're treating the pain that you're trying to escape from. So I learned that lesson the hard way by, spending my adult life in a successful career in the medical device space. And I left that industry and I thought it was by my own choice mostly on some level. And in spite of that, I got stuck. I got stuck with this belief that I'd somehow failed. Mm-hmm. And I'd been so tied up in who I was, being tied to that job or that career, that I no longer knew who I was without it. And I tried really, I wanted to start this new business that was creative. I wanted to do all these other things to the point that I even immediately started an LLC, and was like running right out there. But it took me, the business almost never really got going. I mean, I could never push go because I was so afraid to fail. And so
what happened there?
Yeah. So part of that then was I escaped. All through my adult life, I had been using alcohol as a way to make it easier for me to socialize with people. And it worked. It made me fun. It made me, not that I wouldn't be fun without it, but it made it easier for me to go into that situation. I didn't understand why it was so difficult for me, but it was. And I know people who suffer with any kind of social anxiety will understand that, that sometimes is debilitating to walk into a room full of people that you don't know and to, connect. So it leads you to a belief system that doesn't support connecting with others. And so that alcohol was always there. And then some other things came in, whether it was cocaine or at the very end, it's crystal meth for a period of time. And, it was bad. It was really bad.
And here's the thing that I find interesting. You knew it was bad, but.
Right. So that's the definition of an addiction. Continuing to do this thing that moves you away from pain in spite of the fact that it's not helping you and it's not serving you.
So how long were you in that spiral?
So I would say, 3 years. Wow. 3 years.
During that time, were you working?
No.
Right. So what happened? So this is the pain, right? You hit a rock bottom. Clearly.
So yeah, now you're touching on some things that I have like little statements about, but it's rock bottom is what you say it is. It doesn't have to be anything horrendous. It's when you make the decision to move forward, that's your rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
It's all between you and you. And
so what was that decision? How did that come about for you?
Well, mostly it sounds funny, but I really knew that I'm too old to be I'm not a young person who can couch surf, right? So it's like, hold on, this is not going to end well for me. Who's going to be like, where am I? I've got to take some responsibility here. I've got to be the adult in the room. And in spite of the fact that I was trying to help other people, I didn't have the tools to do it.
And here's a question I have in my head. Did people around you know? Did they know you were in pain? Did they know you were an addict? Did they know you were in struggle?
So what do addicts do? They isolate. And so
how about with your family?
Yeah, so I didn't really talk to them that much.
And did they find that odd?
Oh yeah, I mean, my sister would do well checks. Like she'd call my concierge to have them come up and see if I was still alive. But to their credit, they didn't push. They just loved, which is really, because had they pushed, I would have run away, obviously. I would have even further disconnected from them. But what I believe, what you believe, what any addict believes is that they're connecting to something else. That something else is the drug or the alcohol and those people that they're doing it with. Those aren't real connections. They're based in fear. They're based in a belief that something's not available to you, and they're not lasting. So
an unfulfilled life.
Yeah, it's unfulfilled. It's insanity, honestly.
So what did you do?
So through some cooperative components, I started to believe that God was speaking to me. Well, I still believe God speaks to me through YouTube, through whatever media. God has so many different ways to get to you today. And now, luckily, I have the ability to actually hear and listen to myself. But when you're in an addiction, you've abandoned yourself for the situation that's not serving you. So stop abandoning yourself so that you can reconnect to your intuition. You can reconnect to something that will lead you down a path, that will lead you down a good path. And so in the meantime, I started using YouTube to help me find that path. And different things came to me. But one of the things that was most, I guess I was lucky because I had several opportunities to see things clearly in spite of the fact that I was in the middle of something that was very.
But don't you feel like that is the higher?
That is God.
Whatever, right? That's the source, right?
Yeah, that's source energy. That which man calls God, right? Mm-hmm. So, whatever you're comfortable with, call it that. Your higher why, your soul, whatever it is. I call it God now. I didn't used to. But the truth is, I'm listening to this not podcast, but this recording of someone talking about you have to move yourself to an emotion, a high vibrational emotion of happiness, joy, love, or appreciation to move forward. And they said, you need to think of a place that brought you to happiness or joy. Here I am on the 23rd floor, overlooking South Point, Miami Beach, a world-class view. There are people on the beach. Meanwhile, my shades are pulled most of the time. And I look out over my balcony and I thought, it's not a place. That's not making me happy. So it's not a place. And then they said, and this all happened in probably seconds. It felt like an eternity. They said, or say something to yourself. And I think they said, what do you need to be? And I remember sitting down on the sofa and saying, wow, I need to be strong. But if I say that out loud and someone heard me, they would laugh because I'm so weak. But I said,
and was that true or is that a lie?
Well, so it was true for my ego at the time, right? It was
right.
It was the way I was acting. It was the way I was showing up in the world. And so I sat down on the couch and I said, I am strong.
Mm.
And just like just now, chills went from here all the way.
Me too.
And
Because I don't think that people understand the power
Mhm.
of the word, because what I learned training with you and training with Marissa's, the brain doesn't discriminate. If you tell the brain I'm a loser and I'm weak, it's like, okay. And if you tell the brain, you know what, I'm strong and I can do this, the brain's like, okay, let's go. Like it listens, it's a sponge, it soaks it up.
It's a subjective mind. The subconscious mind is subjective. It's just listening, believing whatever your conscious mind is telling it is true. It must be true if I'm telling it to me, and then it makes what you tell it, the belief that it develops through that truth, it makes it real. And within 6 months of me saying I am strong and connecting to, well, I said to myself, did I just get connected to, or did I just get into alignment? And here, people who recognize Abraham Hicks will know exactly where, where this is coming from. But I just got into alignment. I played with that for a short period of time. And within 3 months, I had put all my stuff in storage. And in a couple months after that, I had driven out of Miami and left behind that whole circle that was pulling me down, that I was allowing to pull me down. It was a choice that I was making on a daily basis.
Well, did you think at that point, like that was what you deserved? Like you didn't really deserve more than just being in that space.
Yeah, and I'd become almost agoraphobic. And all these little things had come to, like I didn't like to leave the apartment at all. So I had people who'd bring me things. I mean, Amazon, for example, right? Yeah. I mean, so I would order my food from Instacart and Amazon Prime. That was just easier than going to the grocery store. And I was less visible if I didn't.
So you go on this eat, pray, love journey, right? And did you even know where you were headed?
I didn't. I had no idea.
So crazy. So what did you do? Like, how do you like, I'm out, but I'll figure it out?
I just said, well, you know what? I'm going north.
Okay.
Because I'm in Miami, so there's not a whole lot of distance. You can go south.
To Cuba.
So yeah, exactly. So I mean, I could go to Key West. That'd be about it. Right. So I ended up going to a friend's house in Pensacola and spent a few days there. And of course, my friend's partner wanted me to go to rehab, and I was like, nope. If I'm going to go to rehab, I'm going to rehab in Palm Springs. Don't ask me why. It just seemed like the better place to go. So I left the house, James, awesome guy, just love, he's like, you're always welcome here, that kind of thing. No push, no, unconditionality, which is exactly what addiction requires to turn to love. And so I didn't even make it to Mobile from Pensacola. And now I know why. I couldn't cross I-65. So I'm from Indiana, and I-65 goes straight to Indiana from Mobile. And I-10, we all know, goes to California. I wanted to go to California, but how responsible is that? I probably should go home, right? Where there are people there. The problem is I knew that if I went there, well-meaning individuals would project onto me who they thought I was. And I was too weak to resist that and to create anything new for myself.
All right. So my question is what did you, and I'm glad you said that you were too weak to resist that. So what would that have required you? Because clearly you're trying to step into your authentic self, right? Yeah. So to say, I would have been too weak to resist them putting their thoughts about who I am and what I am on me. What did you think that was going to be?
Yeah, it would have been, the traditional, it had been societal teaching, societal's way of looking at the world, right? You've got to stop using this drug, and you've got to get a job, and you've got to work hard, and then everything's going to be perfect. And I knew somehow that's not true, but I was too afraid to go on that road by myself. By the way, I'd had a retinal detachment, and I was just getting used to driving with one eye. So
all purpose in the pain, right?
Yeah, right. So here I am stuck in Daphne, Alabama, and this is how my book starts, actually. So here I am stuck in Daphne, Alabama, not understanding that I was both physically or figuratively, that I was literally and figuratively stuck. So I couldn't move forward because I didn't know which way to go.
So what did that look like? Were you just staying in a hotel?
Yeah.
And how long were you there?
For 3 days.
Okay. And what are you doing? Because now in my thought, I'm like, okay, you're having issues with substances and addiction. Are you now starting to go into like a fury of
no, I still had stuff.
Okay, so now you're just like numbing out and like, it's
numbing out.
Right.
So,
and
but
you're like, what am I doing here?
As that started to become clear, even to me, that it was a waste of time, it didn't make sense. I said, you know what? God has a message for me on YouTube. What's that message?
Oh my God, I love it. Please tell me that's the topic of your book. God has a message for me on YouTube.
Maybe something like that. So I thought, you know what? I wonder what Marianne Williamson has to say to me today. I look at her, all of her, because she'd been teaching me through her videos and her lectures, A Course in Miracles. Anybody who's familiar with Course in Miracles knows it's not something you just pick up and read. It takes a little bit of commitment. And it was easier for me to hear it from someone who could teach it well. So I found the title of a video called Crossing a Bridge. And I thought, that must be for me. I'm getting ready to cross the bridge to Mobile. So let me see what that has to say. And she's talking about crossing a bridge between your ego and spirit mind. And I'm like, I've heard this before. Maybe this isn't for me. And then she looks at the camera and she says, you have to stop living your life in fear. And I was like, I don't know what she said after that.
Right. You're like, I'm done.
So I go, oh, that's the message. I've been living my life in fear. And the only way to not live my life in fear is to go and find out what God has planned for me.
Now, was the fear of being you, of
the
showing
fear
up?
Of judgment, mostly for me, the fear of judgment. I think that's really resonates with a lot of people. Yeah. It's all about being seen and being judged.
And how long do you think you were struggling with that?
My whole life.
Like starting at what age?
I know exactly because of RTT.
So I just want people to hear this because I know it too. And we can get to either this part now or maybe we'll do a second episode, but just give them a glimpse at what age you started to realize.
I was
you
8 months old.
Yeah, 8 months old.
When I got the belief, when I developed the belief that I was a disappointment.
Yeah. And can you just share without getting into a lot of detail what it is that you learned?
So through RTT. Through RTT, go back. What we do is when we're learning to do it, we practice with other people who are learning to do it. And one of my colleagues that we were doing a session, I allowed myself to go back to what was a conscious memory, which, I mean, I know that sounds crazy. I was 8 months old and it was a conscious memory of me being sick. I remember my mom saying, I was in a croup tent and she said, the doctor said that if we put this vaporizer at the end of the bed, you're going to feel better, blah, blah, blah. And I remember that. No feelings around it, just memory. But if I created a memory, it must have a lot of feelings, especially at that age. So I went ahead and allowed myself to go back to that scene. And immediately I said, oh, I'm a disappointment. I'm always sick and I'm a disappointment. And no one's coming to see me except for my mom. So I must not be very important. What?
Yeah.
That's through the lens of someone who'd been on the planet for 8 months.
Right. Right. Isn't that fascinating?
No lens to make that judgment from.
Now, growing up, Because of course you didn't have that insight until you were much older. What did you think was the reason for not feeling like you were enough?
Because I'm different and therefore can't connect.
Right.
So, and from Marissa says that, and I couldn't agree more. All of our issues are based on one of three things, or a combination of those. And that is, you don't think you're enough. You feel different and therefore can't connect. Or there's something that you want that's not available to you. Mm-hmm. And, it is a combination of all three things in many people's minds. And when it comes to addiction, I've never met a client who's an addict who didn't have the belief that they weren't good enough on some level.
And I think that that's the really important key here, because what people don't understand, and this is what I try to do with people often, is getting to that moment where you accepted the belief that you weren't enough. And the example, one of my favorite examples, and I asked my client to use this as example. I asked her for permission. I won't use her name, but there was this thing where she didn't feel enough. We were working on self-confidence. She wanted to do an RTT program with me to understand why she doesn't have the self-confidence, so we can kind of break that core belief, because we're all built with confidence. We're all innately born as newborns with confidence. Something happens over a period of time to break that. And the scene she brought me back to was she was 3 years old, and she was telling me they had been robbed. And I asked her how she was feeling, and she said, I'm very anxious. I'm feeling very nervous. I'm scared. My mom is scared. All these different things. I said, how else do you feel? And she goes, unimportant. And I said, why? She goes, well, I'm trying to get my mom's attention while she's talking to the police officer, and she's telling me to be quiet. And I'm like, wow, isn't that amazing? What the 3-year-old ego will turn that into. This is about me. This is not about the fact that my mom's just trying to talk to the police officer and she literally just can't hear, and she's angry and scared.
No
so she actually yelled at me and said, shut up. And now for 48 more years, you've seen every experience in your life through this filter of, well, I must not be important. Once people get to that core piece with, the work that you and I do, it shifts everything, because they're like, oh my God, I'm not 3 anymore.
Even in your conscious mind, you recognize that that's bullshit.
Total bullshit. And that's why I love Marissa's new book, Tell Yourself a Better Lie, because you've literally been telling yourself a lie for 48 years.
So, I look at this belief that I was a disappointment, that then your ego, your conscious mind seeks validation everywhere. Negative bias and confirmation bias come in and create the story that you're looking for. And so my whole entire life is based on a core belief, I'm a disappointment. Then I'm gay. Well, guess what? I'm a disappointment. You just heap it on top of yourself. And so it became like, I didn't like to be seen. Oh, really? I wanted to be invisible. Well, the only way I could be visible was to drink.
Right.
So
then that inhibition is kind of melted a little bit, right?
Because people were like, you didn't seem like you were afraid to be seen. You should, should
have seen you on the dance floor.
Should have seen you. I'm like, believe me, I know. But I did a lot of really fun, crazy things. And they were all of the bad things that came into my life were related to the use of alcohol and drugs.
Yeah.
And, so I continued on down that road of I-10. I'm like, I got to go. And I wrote the first 2 paragraphs, hopefully, of what will be in my book. I start with an editor next week, and hopefully that'll be out later this year. But
awesome.
So I started down that road, and suddenly I looked up literally and said, okay, I'll do it. I'm talking to God here. I said, I will tell this story, even if it's embarrassing as hell to my ego. I'll tell it because I know that by telling it, it will at least help me, and it might help someone else. Suddenly, it was like I was floating down the river finally. And there were synchronicities everywhere, to the point that a couple months later, 3 months later, I think, I had just run into Marissa Peer on YouTube. And here she is saying all your issues are based on the fact that you don't think you're enough. And so say I'm enough. And I've been saying I am strong, which I had no idea how important that was, because I mean, not only is it important from an affirmation standpoint, but if you don't believe affirmations are real, look at Joel 3:10. Let the weak man say, I am strong. You know, I mean, it's in the book. It's our instruction manual.
Right.
If we look at it as it is, which is a symbolic text, not a literal one, it has all the secrets, and that's the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not, I'm spiritual, I'm not religious, but I happen to be in LA. I'm never in LA. I'm literally never in LA. I mean, a couple of times, I think 3 times in my entire life. And one was just recently, and then one was this time. And I was in LA the weekend Marissa was doing a Mind Valley event. The only Mind Valley event that would be in the United States that year was that weekend. And the cheapest hotels in town were next to the venue. And they weren't bad hotels, right? So I'm like, do I wait another day? Okay, let me see. Well, I'll go if I get that check that I've been waiting on. The next morning, I checked my email, and my digital mailbox had, you have mail.
I'm like literally head to toe chills right now, because people don't understand, when you open your heart to receive,
it comes.
And you make the intention,
you
can receive it
with
abundance.
And it's all available. It's all available.
So you obviously went to the Mind Valley.
I said, okay, I have no excuse. I've already said I'd do it. If
oh my gosh.
Okay, I got to go. And guess who else was there, by the way? Well, a whole bunch of people. Whether it was Marissa Peer, she did an RTT session for the whole group. It blew me away. The stuff that came up was, even in a group of 950 people, where she can do it like no one else. I was like, are you kidding me? That scene? What is that? Oh my God, really? And then Marianne Williamson spoke the next day. There was just a ton of really amazing people. And I thought, wow, I want to learn to do what she does. This is the piece that I can bring to those people that I saw in pain, that I wanted to help so badly, but didn't know how. Right. And so now I have this ability. So I know what got me through this. And it was connection to myself first. The core, the center of it all is to love yourself. You have to care about how you feel enough to move forward. And you have to understand that it's not happiness after, it's happiness before. So you get to happiness, and then everything you want can come. But you can't move forward in places of depression, brokenness. You have to first raise the vibration. So what is it? That was the example. Say something to yourself. What is it you could say to yourself, is what I say to clients, that would move you forward. You can use my words if you want, but they're my words. You'll find yours. But is it something like I'm enough? Is it something like I'm accepted? Oh my gosh. I'm sitting with this young guy who has been struggling with an addiction. And I said, what if you could see yourself the way God sees you? And he goes, because I know his family, so I knew that he came from a background of Christianity. Not that it has to be Christianity. It can be anything. And he said, you mean accepted?
Belonging.
And I said, yeah.
Yeah.
And perfect. You came onto the planet perfect and accepted. Or you more truthfully, you came out of the planet and you are a spirit. You're a spirit that is energizing this body,
Yeah.
And this is a communication device. This is how we communicate with each other. And it's also the thing the ego uses to make you think you're separate. Right? It says, no, see, she's over there. She's 1,000 miles away. That you're not connected. What's wrong with you? And religion did us a disservice by putting God outside, some man on the Sistine Chapel.
Right.
Disservice. God's not outside of you. That's separation. It's the Course in Miracles calls it the tiny mad idea. Because you are an idea in the mind of God. An idea cannot leave its source, or does not leave its source. It can be shared, but ultimately we are all an idea, including every animal and this planet and the entire universe, an idea in the mind of God. So we're all one. And when we think we're separate, it's an illusion and it's insanity. And it creates suffering. All suffering is based on the belief that we're separate. And if you can see, and that's forgiveness, right? When you can see your brother or sister as perfect.
Yeah. Yep. And it's so interesting because I just was working with a client on this recently about the difference between doing and being. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to her about, regardless of anything that's happened in your life, your soul is as pure as the day you were born.
Yeah.
Everything else is an action. Everything else is an action.
Yeah. Action, karma, your soul is holy, right? And I use that word not to put anyone off, but it's whole. Holy means whole and eternal.
Yeah.
So we replace holy with whole and eternal. That's part of you that will always be. And so that is, and according to A Course in Miracles, which they sum it up in the very beginning so well with, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And all we're really looking for here is peace of mind in every situation.
And when you say at the end of the day, peace of mind is just self-acceptance?
Self-acceptance and love, right? So once you can start to look at every single person that you come in contact with through one criteria, and that is that all actions are either an expression of love or a call for it.
I was going to say, or an expression of fear, like help me.
So you're either asking for love or you're expressing it. So when
that's so good.
That's A Course in Miracles. It's not me.
All right. So with that, because I'm watching the time on it, one of the things I did yesterday is I did a Facebook post on when I had my most recent kind of come to my knees, come to Jesus, I am really in a bad place time, which was 10 years ago. And I had no money to really seek out the help that I so desperately wanted and needed at the time. I did a lot of what you were doing. I was seeking it out on YouTube. I was listening to podcasts, but I started to read. And I was not a reader. I would not call myself having been a great student by way of grades. Just wasn't my jam. But I had been introduced to a book and I read it so fast and it was so poignant and it was so powerful. And it literally to this day has been the book that shifted the lens through which I saw all people, right?
Yeah.
And all relationships, all things. It put so many question marks of what had happened in my life to rest at that point. So I did a post the other day on the 5 books, the OGs, the original books I read that started me on this journey. So you've been talking a lot about the Course in Miracles. I'm wondering if you can share top 3 or 5 books that have been really powerful, the most powerful for you on this particular journey.
Yeah. So for me, I listen a lot. So Power of Now, A Course in Miracles.
That's Eckhart Tolle, right?
Eckhart Tolle, yeah. I didn't even understand that when Oprah featured him back in 2009. I wanted to so badly. And then as I'm driving around the country after becoming sober, I'm listening to that and I'm like, well, yeah, duh.
Right. You're like,
It's all happening
now.
It's all happening now. So that's the interesting thing, right? It is all happening now. So where spirit and time intersect is now. So don't drag with you. And now no judgment here, right? So the important thing is to see everything through compassion and love and empathy, as opposed to judgment and guilt, right? That's the thing that's going to drag you back into the past, into depression, and keep you stuck in that addiction. So anybody who's struggling with it, there's a way out. You only need one person to believe in you. You only need one. And that one person is you.
Right.
And it helps a whole hell of a lot if you have a couple more, and there are plenty of Bible quotes about that, where two or more, are gather in my name, I'm there, right? So it becomes more powerful. You just need one, and that's you. You have to start believing in you first.
So how does somebody, and we'll get back to the books because you gave me two, I need one more.
Oh.
But how does somebody get to that point? Because somebody could be listening to this and be like, yeah, that's easier said than done. I hate myself. Yeah. I'm worth shit.
What
and
else
if anybody else sees me, they're going to know the truth.
Well, what else could be true? You can go general, right? So you might have to go general on this one in the beginning. I mean, for me, it was just, I am strong. Wasn't true. Yeah. Wasn't true. Well, it was true, but I wasn't acting that way. So
you didn't believe it. It was true. Yeah, you did not believe it.
Yeah. And so to answer your book question, it's The Way of Mastery, which is like the same thing. It's a light version of A Course in Miracles. And I'm
also Marianne Williamson?
No, well, Marianne didn't write the course. No, she's a teacher of the course.
I'm learning. Who wrote The Course in Miracles?
Written by Dr. Helen Schuckman and her colleague. I never remember his name, but they're two psychologists from Columbia. Yeah, Columbia University Medical School, and they were psychologists. Psychiatrists, and they partnered together and wrote this book, which is channeled. So.
Understood. So Course in Miracles, and The Power of Now.
Power of Now. I mean, there's probably more.
And what was the other one you said?
The Way of Mastery. It's a version of it's written from Jesus' perspective.
Okay.
And I've got all these books behind me.
But what I love about this is I have not read any of these books.
Yeah.
Power of Now. I'm like you. I have it on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
And you can see I always have books here on my table behind me, but that to me, same thing. I probably bought it at around the same time, 2009, tried it, didn't connect, tried it again, didn't connect. And I was just thinking to myself recently, I'm so much more evolved now.
Yeah.
I got to go back and pick it up, but I have like a stack of books this thick for my coursework right now.
Right. The teacher or the book shows up when you're ready for it. Right.
And that's why I devoured the book that was my top one.
What you needed, right? Yeah.
Daring Greatly by Brene Brown shifted everything.
Yeah. She's awesome.
Ridiculous.
The other thing, another book is I'm reading right now, The Complete Reader of Neville Goddard. So it's all of his books. And this guy in 1930s to 1950, his message was you have to feel the feeling of the wish fulfilled in a state akin to sleep. So as you're going to sleep every day, revise your day the way you would like for it to have happened. So what's a state akin to sleep? It's meditation and hypnosis.
Yeah.
So it's that state of alpha brainwaves that you get into right before you're falling asleep every night. And it is the opportunity to speak to your subconscious mind. So use it and it will move you forward really fast. But replay the day, because the truth is your mind is always using your past to create your future. So why not rewire the past to serve you better and create the future.
You know what's interesting? I just was reading an article about my cousin who's a fashion designer in Paris. And one of the things I didn't know that he did was when he was doing a collection for the last house that he worked for, he wrote the review he would want to read at the beginning of developing the collection.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, that's brilliant.
And that's what Neville talks about is
that's why I'm saying it.
Write that last chapter and don't worry about all the chapters in the middle.
Write the review you want somebody to write about your book.
So what do we do in RTT when we record something for a hypnosis for a client? We say, you can see yourself standing on that stage, delivering that phenomenal talk. And afterwards, you hear people coming up to you, telling you how much your book changed their life. You can feel the feeling of that moment. It's the same thing. It's telling your subconscious mind, this is what you are going to create for me.
Well, this is manifestation at its core.
To work to create the Son of Man.
Yeah.
Manifestation.
I never put those two together. That's brilliant.
It wasn't me either, but anyway.
But this is why I love talking to you, and I love talking to all the people that I connect with in this space, because I learn something every single time.
Wow.
And for people that don't know, you were here recently in the New York area, and we had dinner with a couple of other colleagues. And awesome. What was so inspiring to me about that dinner is we didn't all really know each other that well, right? But we're all talking about pretty much what we're talking about right now. We're all sharing what books we've read. And I walked away with so much new information because you guys actually, four of us, there were 5 of us at dinner. One of them is not in therapy, like not in coaching at all, right? So of the 4 left that were in coaching, the 3 of you were all reading Neville Goddard. You were all reading all these people that, and I consider myself well-read, but you had told me about Neville Goddard, but I had never heard about that or him beforehand. So I'm always getting exposed and learning new things, which I can always dive deeper into. And it's a very enriching opportunity for me.
And another one I'll put on the list is A Return to Love. And the reason I want to mention that, and that's Marianne, and that, is because she stole like literally the best. It's hers. She can have it. The best title.
Yeah.
Because I've realized that that's all we're really here to do.
Isn't that the purpose?
To love. That's our purpose.
Yeah.
So in every moment, how can I return to love? And what is love? God is love, right? What is God? Love. So, if we can just in any moment understand where's that coming from, and you don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it, but when you can see that it's coming from judgment or it's coming from these feelings of shame or guilt, that's your ego. Your ego is a destroyer of everything. Course in Miracles says your ego is at best suspicious and at worst, vicious.
Yeah. Vicious is a good word for it.
Yeah. So it's auspicious, suspicious, and vicious. There's none of those words are good. It's only here to tell you that you're not enough and that who do you think you are? Well, the truth is it's here to keep you safe on the planet, but it's no longer, it may serve you occasionally in certain ways, but your email isn't going to eat you.
Right.
Right. But all of this, it's really at some point you start to say, do I even need you? No. So recognizing that anything that makes you separate is coming from that, you can then turn around. I like to think of myself as literally saying, wait, where's that thought coming from? Is it coming from fear? Because if it's fear, it's the ego. How can I turn to love?
Well, we just had this conversation before we got on. I told you last night I was getting really angry because Matt was asking me to wrap up my numbers for last year and finalize the taxes on my 2 businesses. And every time he asks me to do it, I get so angry, not with him, but I become an edgier person. My kids are like, what's for dinner? I'm like, dinner. Like, I'm just like being such a bitch. Like, I'm so angry. And because I do the work, I'm like, why are you asking me for dinner at 6 o'clock? I'm like, well, shit, like dinner. But my own self, I was like, all right, checking myself. I'm like, I know all anger comes from fear. What am I afraid of? I'm afraid I'm going to mess up these numbers. I'm afraid I don't know what I'm doing. I'm afraid this is not my comfort zone.
Who do you think you are? You're not an accountant.
Who the hell am I? Yeah.
Yeah.
Who am I to even have these two businesses? I mean, it was like
imposter.
The can of worms was like,
alert.
But I
you want to do an RTT session about that?
Yeah, right, exactly. So I was like, I got it in that moment, but I only got it because I do this work all the time. I'm doing the work while I'm doing the work with my clients, right? We're all constantly learning and evolving with every single conversation. And so I very quickly ascertained, all right, you're not angry, you're fearful. You're fearful that you're going to mess up these numbers. Is that true? Probably not. Right. Is there someone you can ask? Sure is. Is anybody expecting you to be perfect in this moment? No. And as soon as I could talk myself off the ledge, I was like, who wants dinner? You know, I was like a very different person.
So easy, right? It's
easy.
It's turning. It's turning from that paddling upstream,
100%,
to let me go with the flow.
Go with the flow.
You know, and people are. It's funny when you start talking like that. People are like, "Well, if I just go with the flow, then nothing's going to get done." No, it's the difference between inspired action and required action.
Someone said to me, one of my clients, and Marissa says this is so true. We learn more from the work that we do than any studying we ever do, right? Yeah. So one of my clients schooled me the other day and told me what she's learned is that all motivation comes from fear and all inspiration comes from excitement. When you're motivated to do something, you're afraid, what would happen if I don't do it?
Right.
But inspiration comes from curiosity.
Right? And I love that. I tell people, and even in my role as a trainer and a mentor in RTT, engage your interest and curiosity.
Yeah.
And before long, you'll start to call it intuition.
100%. So this is a great place to end. So my question is for you, twofold. Number one, I just need to get this working over here. Number one, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's a good way for them to get in touch with you?
Through my website at GregoryRGilmore.com.
Okay. And how about on Instagram, social media?
R. Gilmore.
Awesome. And if, just to make it really clear for everybody, Gregory does do RTT by way of his coaching, and he does love to work with people who are struggling with a sense of self-worth. Perhaps it's leading to addiction. Is there anything people can, do you have anything special you can offer them, or?
Yeah, so on my website, there are a couple links to meditation or hypnosis that I've put together. And on my YouTube channel, there are 3 opportunities to experience what a transformational recording would be like through RTT. And then also
do you have like any kind of free offering? Can people have like a free call with you?
Oh yeah, free call.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Love to talk to you about what's going on and see if there's a way we could work together and help you through it.
I love it. I love it. This has been so super enjoyable. Truly.
Thank you.
So much fun. And again, if people want to get in touch with Gregory, you can just check him out on Instagram or Facebook at his name, Gregory R. Gilmore, or his website, www.GregoryRGilmore. So thank you so much. For people that are catching it on the replay, drop your questions or your comments right on Facebook or in YouTube, where they're both live. And we'll get back to you guys once you're watching it on the replay. So thank you guys so much for giving us your time, and have a great day.